everybody and welcome to the Spring Book Tag. Okay, I know this is almost July by the time this will be coming out, but I got tagged, but then I was doing my Witchlands week and yeah, it's just happening now. I mean, it almost works because it's been fucking Baltic in Scotland until like literally this month, so we kind of felt like we haven't really had spring, so I'm taking June as our spring and summer can start in July. So we're just going to do this now. I got tagged by John over by @WalkerWrites7. You should definitely go check out his channel. He is lovely and his content's really great. He does loads of reviews and book tags and discussions for all his favourite books and even mangas and stuff. And he has just been so supportive since I started my booktube back in May. Like, he's always commenting on my videos and he's tagged me in a few book tags that I'm getting around to doing. He's just so sweet, and I really appreciate that he takes the time to look out for and talk to smaller booktubers like myself. Like, he's just so sweet. You need to go and watch all his videos and subscribe to his channel because he's really great. But thank you so much, John, for tagging me in this book tag. I'm really looking forward to doing it. So without any further ado, question 1 is flowers. All the flowers we remember are blooming again. Pick a book that's a fresh take on a retelling. I actually have a couple of responses for this. The first one is Cinderella is Dead, and this one's quite fresh because it, instead of doing a retelling of the story, it sort of poses the question of what happened after the original tale of Cinderella, and you follow how it's become almost a ritual, how all the girls, that's how they meet their suitors now, is once they turn, I think, 16, they have to start attending balls, and the men will then choose their wives there, and sort of, it's a really interesting concept to think about the aftermath of such a popular fairy tale. And my other one has to be Sister Song. This is a retelling of an old English folk ballad called The Twa Sisters, and in the whole trend of retellings and reimaginings, I've never really come across one that's of a ballad really, and especially sort of old English medieval sort of setting and stuff. This is a really, really great book, and it's one that I think have flown under people's radars a bit, but I definitely recommend it. It's a really interesting retelling. Next up is Cadbury Mini Eggs. Obviously the superior springtime candy of choice. I mean, Galaxy's golden eggs are kind of overtaking Cadbury Mini Eggs for me a little bit. Like, I do like a good golden egg. Pick a book that you consider to be a sweet treat. For that one, I'm gonna go with sort of ones. My first pick for that is The Witch Hunter, which is objectively not the best book I've ever read. You can kind of tell what's going to happen, and a lot of the tropes it goes through are, you know, pretty predictable enough. But I bought it when I was in a bit of a book slump, and that's the kind of books I like to read when I'm in a slump. I like to know where they're going, and I really enjoyed the concept. It's sort of set in sort of the time in England where the witch burnings and the witch hunts were really happening and stuff, and you follow this witch hunter who then ends up being accidentally sort of being taken in by witches who don't realise that she's a witch hunter, and then she sort of realises that perhaps everything she's been taught is perhaps wrong, and she starts a bit of a romance with one of the witches. And I honestly really love this duology. Like, it's, like I said, it's not the best thing I've ever read in my entire life, but it's just so fun. I really love her character. I love just the setting and the whole idea. You know, I love a good witchy story. I liked the witches and the magic in this. I just thought it was really, really good. And it's one that I do reread from time to time, and I'm really glad that I found it. My other option is going to be The Invisible Library series by Genevieve Cogman. This is the 7th book in this series, The Dark Archive, and the 8th book I just found out yesterday. It's coming out at the end of this year, and it's called The Untold Story, which is so exciting because I didn't realise that there was actually a title for it, which is great. And the reason why I say sweet treat is because this book series has everything. Like, it is fantasy, it has different time periods, it has alternate realities, it has vampires and werewolves and magic, it has fae, but in this story the fae are the literal embodiments of literary tropes, which is fascinating. You have you have a giant interdimensional library, you have librarians who are spies that go out and steal books and bring them back to the library, you have dragons, you have dragon fae politics. It's an amazing book series, and it just has everything, and all of that stuff that I mentioned works. It doesn't feel random, it doesn't feel like there's too much going on, it all works in the setting, and each book is almost a standalone. So you could possibly jump in at any time of this book series because each book has sort of its own thing going on, and oh, it's just so good. So it follows this librarian who as I said, works for the library, and so there she gets sent out into alternate realities and alternate worlds to go steal books, and she gets sent into this one world that's a sort of steampunk Victorian London sort of version, sort of world with her new assistant Kai, and yeah, just from there, you know, each book they have sort of have a new mission from the library to go into a different world, so you see different worlds, you see sort of 1920s Prohibition America, you see a sort of alternate reality where Russia's the ruling power, but there's magic in that world. You see Venice during sort of like mask time and things. It's so creative and it's so much fun, and it's really brilliant. And as you're going along, you know, there's one book that's a rescue mission, there's one book that's a murder mystery story, there's one book that's a heist story. Like, each sort of book has its own thing and its own worlds that they visit, and slowly you're uncovering this larger story about the library and the history of the dragons and the history of the Fae. And it just works so well, and it's just so much fun. And the audiobooks are really great as well if you want to read the audiobooks. And they're not too long either, they're quite short, which is, yeah, they're just so much fun, such a sweet treat. Number 3 is allergies. Seasonal allergies often make your eyes water. Pick a book that made you cry. I never cry at books. I'm more likely to cry at TV shows and stuff. I think it's like the music and the sound and things, that's what tends to get to me rather than reading things. So the one book that I have cried at in my entire life was The Book Thief. I was in public, I think I just finished a hockey training session, I was waiting for my dad to pick me up, and I was just waiting, and I finished it, and I was like holding back tears because I was like, I'm in public, you can't cry, and it's just, yeah, that book just gets me. Number 4 is spring cleaning, out with the old and in with the new, pick a book to unhaul. Now, I very rarely unhaul books because I reread a lot, and I quite like to keep a hold of old favourites, or even books I didn't like, on the chance that maybe I'll reread them in the future and I'll perhaps enjoy them or have a different opinion on them. So the last time I sort of unhauled a bunch of books was years ago. I got rid of stuff like, you know, my old Time Riders series and just stuff that I had really grown out of reading. So yeah, this one was quite hard for me, but I suppose I'd have to go with The Bone Season. This is a book I read for my book club a couple of years ago, and I read it sort of just on my phone, and then my friend actually got me this copy because she thought I would enjoy it. As it turned out, I didn't quite really enjoy it, to be honest. Like, it's definitely that sort of early 2010s dystopian, you know, kind of fiction kind of, well, maybe not dystopian, but you know, that sort of stuff where, ooh, she finds out she's got this power or something, and she gets taken to this place with these ruling people. I can't even remember what happened in this. It had a really interesting, I remember I liked the first part of it because I liked the sort of streets of London aspect, but then once she got taken to the sort of like training place, I was like, oh, okay, this is where this is going. So yeah, I didn't like the romance and things, so I think I'll probably unhaul this one, but as I said, I don't really unhaul, so it'll probably sit on my shelf for quite a while until I've got a bigger amount of books to get rid of, then I'll pop down to my local charity shop. Because the next one is, it's the perfect time for an adventure, pick a book involving a road trip. Now, I couldn't think of anything that involved a road trip. Like, I have barely read any books that really come across that, so I'm going to twist it and say a book with travelling, or a book that has travel as an important aspect, and for that I'm going to go with The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. This is my favourite classic. I have read it so many times, it's amazing. His other book, The Moonstone, not so much, not a fan of that, but The Woman in White, so good. And in this book there's at one point a plot point where somebody travelling between London and the house that they're all originally from, the timing of that becomes very important to the mystery, and yeah, that was just a sort of, they're going to try and, it's a sort of detective fiction novel really, that you follow this art tutor who gets sent up to this big old house to teach the 2 young women that live there, and he falls in love with one of them and creates an amazing friendship with the other. The other one's, she's called Marion Halcombe, and she is like my favourite character in fiction. And when it turns out that the woman he has fallen in love with, Laura, when she gets engaged, he sort of goes away because it's sort of too painful, he doesn't want to. And it's hinted that she's also in love with him, so it's to try and make things easier for both of them. And then you find out really that her husband's perhaps not quite as honourable as you think he is, and Marion's really sort of trying to protect her sister, and yeah, there's this whole mystery about this woman in white who keeps turning up, who has a serious issue with the man that Laura's due to marry, and it's really brilliant. I've explained it poorly, but at one point travel becomes really quite important to uncovering the mystery. 6 is mating season. It's that time of year in the animal kingdom to make some babies. Pick a book with some smutty delights. I don't like smut scenes, I don't really like sex scenes. Fine, do it. I'd rather it just cut to black. I don't really want to read it half the time. Like, it's not that it bothers me, I just like, okay, this is what we're doing sort of thing. Like, I can read them, but I'll forget about them soon after, and I'm sort of like, why did we need to go through that? But, you know, I get that some people are into them, so I might have to just go with Kingsbane, or, well, The Furyborn. The Imperium trilogy by Claire Legrand. It starts with Furyborn, then you have Kingsbane, and then Lightbringer. And it's not that I don't enjoy the sex scenes in this, but they're not too bad, and I think there's not too many, and they do sort of come at the right time in the book, because I have read books where they're just thrown in there almost as if to be like, look, have some sex scenes, enjoy, sort of thing. Yes, I'm talking about Sarah J Maas. So I felt that they were sort of, you know, they didn't feel too thrown in here. They did feel like they were actually plotted out as to why they were there, and yeah, so. And some of them did cut to black, like it didn't feel the need to show them to you all the time. So yeah, I thought it was sort of better paced and better thought out than a lot of other sort of smutty books. 7 is rainbows. I just feel like spring is made of freaking rainbows. Pick a book featuring LGBTQ+ characters. So I'm gonna have to go with Binding by Bridget Collins. This follows a man who is ill in a world where books are actually the sort of transferred memories of people who, if you go to the bookbinder, they will take a memory that you don't want, put it into a book, and then you will no longer have any memory of that book or having gone to the bookbinder. And the world building in this is really great on how they sort of really integrate how the world would look if that was something that could happen, if that was what people could do with memories that they don't want anymore, and how some other people could perhaps abuse this ability, particularly those in power. And yeah, there's a MLM romance in here, and I really enjoy this book. I think it's one that sort of flies under the radar a bit, and yeah, it's just got a very pretty cover as well. And I'm also going to do another one, which is Aratsue by Darcy Little Badger. The main character in this is Ace, and I really like this book. It's sort of about this girl who goes to uncover the death of her cousin after she sees his ghost appearing to her when he dies, who says that he didn't die in an accident, he actually died, he was murdered, and he wants her to uncover the truth. It's about a leaping Apache girl, and it's set in a sort of alternate world where magic is real, and she has the ability to raise the spirits of dead animals. And it's a really, really good book, and yeah, as I said, you know, she's an ace main character, it's brought up on page, and it's not seen as anything weird, and I really like it. Number 8 is Spring Awakening. This is one of my all-time favourite musicals, even though it's filled with completely dysfunctional characters. I don't really know Spring Awakening, unfortunately. Pick a book that's also filled with completely dysfunctional characters. I'm going to go with Dream Country by Ashley Brown. This is about 3 siblings, the god of sleep, the god of nightmares, and the goddess of dreams, who are all suspects in the murder of their mother, the goddess of night. And yeah, they're dysfunctional just because, like, you know, they're such a dysfunctional family. They don't trust each other, they all completely misunderstand each other. There's so much just assuming one thing and another person assuming another thing, and yeah, they're a very dysfunctional sibling trio. Yeah, it's definitely a very good book as well. Like, I really enjoyed it. I believe it's going to be a trilogy, and yeah, it's a very good book. In Like a Lion, Out Like a Lamb. Pick a book series that didn't get better as it progressed. Okay, so Flame in the Mist. The first book was so good. It's like a Mulan retelling, but this time in sort of feudal Japan. It was a really interesting setting. I thought the characters were great. I thought the Mulan character was amazing. And then the sequel, Smoke in the Sun, was just hot garbage. It just tied everything up way too quickly, like, because they'd really raised the stakes by the end of the first book, and then it just didn't go anywhere. And I couldn't have cared less for the romance in the second book, and the plot twists that came out there in the first book I was sort of like a bit disappointed in, and I like further disappointed in them in the second book, so yeah, it wasn't as good as the first book. Another one is going to have to be Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas. So I loved the first 2-3 books. Like, I really enjoyed the assassin character. I actually really enjoyed the fact that she didn't end up with the first guy that she sort of had a thing with. I really enjoyed the dynamic between her and Kale, and I liked where the series was going with the sort of absence of magic and, you know, a lost princess and things, but then it all sort of just went downhill when you find out that, I mean, it's been out for years, so yeah, spoilers for the first few books. When you find out that Selena is actually the lost princess and Nehemia dies, and you start introducing the Fae, and then instead of like actually showing a realistic relationship that takes work, you have this whole soulmates thing with Rowan. Like, I hate Rowan's character so much. Like, yeah, it just really disappoints me that it sort of started out as a really unique idea with a really morally grey character and just went so tropey, so cliche, and it just got worse and worse with the fact that, you know, she starts, you know, as I said earlier, I don't like reading sex scenes. In the first few books, if there's sex scenes, it's a cut to black. Great. But then after, like, you know, the success of ACOTAR, which was, you know, another one that got worse as it went on, like, yeah, suddenly in Empire of Storms they're banging every page and you're just like, okay. And everything happens off page, like, you know, you get all the sex scenes on page and then all the plot happens off page, like, oh, it was hot garbage. And, like, you know, I read all the way up until Tower of Dawn. I read every book in this series, except for the last one. Do you know how bad you have to make your series to get someone who never DNFs a book to not read the last book in your series because she knows it's not worth it? Like, I have read, what's that, 6 books, 7 if you can count the novella, and I have decided that your last book of this huge series is not worth it because the rest is so hot garbage. Like, that is impressive. But yeah, and also another one is Delirium by Lauren Oliver. I really liked the first book. It's sort of in a sort of world where, sort of dystopian world kind of thing, where they see love as a disease, and I think it was at age 16 or 18, or perhaps when you get married or something, they basically like perform a fucking lobotomy on you so that you can't feel love and emotions anymore. And yeah, really interesting concept, especially when the main character, you know, she starts falling in love with somebody. And yeah, it was a really, really good first book. I loved the way it ended, and then the rest of the series was just forgettable. Didn't like any of the ways it went, didn't like the sort of hasty love triangle they had in the second book. It was just a bit hot garbage. Yeah, it was such a shame because the setup was really good. And finally, tag some friends. I don't have any on BookTube. I've got my one friend on BookTube already tagged me, so this is, if you want to do this, even if it's, you know, summer, consider yourself tagged. You're my friend now, you shall be tagged. But thanks again to John for tagging me in this tag. I really enjoyed doing it, and I will get to the other 2 that you tagged me in, I promise. I will get there. Again, I'll leave his channel in the comments, in the description below. His channel's really great, you should definitely go check that out. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of all these books. Have you read any of these books? Please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and what are your answers to some of these prompts? I would love to hear from you. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.